And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Danny Kanell. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe. Smash that like and comment. Join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 tailgate, where Michael's in the house. I asked for Michael. He's here.
Michael.
Feels like, let's go. I mean, no, that's what we are going to get into big game breakdown. And of course, you know that offensive line is going to be a very, very big part of the conversation. Now, as they are going to look to reshuffle, look to try to defend Jack Sawyer, Tyleek Williams, and the rest of that JTT, the rest of that Ohio State defensive front, create lanes for the run game and so much more. So big game breakdown coming up in just a little bit. But first, it's not the coaching carousel yet, or will it be? Because reports around the NFL coaching carousel indicate that Colorado head coach Deion Sanders is a target for the Dallas Cowboys job. Deion has discussed taking the call, said how much he respects Jerry Jones and what an honor is, but how much he loves it in Boulder. Danny, You obviously, as one of our top NFL analysts on CBS Sports HQ and the like, and obviously here as one of our top college football voices as well, the Deion Cowboys flirtation is right in Danny's wheelhouse. No, I don't have as much of an idea of who else is involved in the Cowboys search, right? So
right.
How do you handicap whether this is a courtesy call or whether this is something that might have some real legs to it?
Oh, I think this has legs. And I've always kind of, going back probably a year and a half ago when Deion was at Colorado and it was starting hot, his name was out there, I thought this was one of the places that made sense. Jerry Jones, his story. You talk to any guys that play for him, like he likes his guys, right? He takes care of his guys. He likes people that he knows and hiring people that he knows. And he also likes big names, like brands. He likes the splashy hires. Look at the coaches he's brought in there. Going all the way back to Jimmy Johnson when he was at Miami, had that thing rolling. He brought him in. Bill Parcells, like the list goes on and on. This would fit right in that mold. And then from Deion, so I think Jerry is genuinely interested in it. I think he definitely is calling to kick the tires, to check in with Deion and see if he would consider doing it. I think Deion's first question is, well, who's my quarterback going to be? And can I bring my son? Like, can I get Shador? Can we figure that out? I think that's very much at the front of his mind. And what's the likelihood with losing Travis Hunter or losing Shador Sanders that you can maintain the success at Colorado that you just had this year, or you could parlay this 1 year of success into a bigger job in the biggest sport in the planet? So I think it's absolutely real. I think Jerry's probably weighing this now and considering mulling an offer and seeing what else is out there. I also believe that he's probably kicking the tires on Bill Belichick, like it seems everybody else is. So I think it's absolutely real. And I do, I think it's 50-50,
Wow.
which is pretty high percentage. Like, I don't think it's done. I don't think it's no chance. I think it's 50-50 that it could happen.
I really don't know how to handicap like Danny just did there with 50-50. I think a lot of us for a long time thought Deion was not going to be long-term at Colorado. Certainly he could. Like, he's saying the right thing still. And obviously, of course, you're going to take the call from the Cowboys if you're coaching Colorado. Like, there are not a whole lot of jobs in college from which you wouldn't leave for Dallas. So the Cowboys, obviously pretty good job in the NFL. Could he bring Shador? Like, is Dallas going to be in a position to be able to pick Shador?
Some people have proposed the hypothetical draft trades, trade Dak Prescott to the Titans. You get in return the number 1 overall pick. I don't know if the Titans are going to sign, and like 2 other picks as well. I don't know if the Titans would sign up for that, but one thing I've learned when you hear teams have cap issues, like they usually figure it out. If there was a way, like they could potentially figure out how to make that happen. But the question is, I know what Deion wants, but the draft community is pretty split on Shador Sanders, I would say. And more I think are leaning toward Cam Ward as the number 1 overall QB than Shador Sanders right now.
But he's still 2. We're not trying to talk ourselves into somebody.
Which might actually benefit them if they are the Cowboys trying to get Shador.
Sure. Because That's one thing we always take. It always frustrates me when the NFL draft community starts to really pick apart these guys. And just because you start slotting them differently, you're trashing a player. It's like, okay, I understand your scouting card has pros and cons, and the cons are the only thing that's leading to back up your decision. But Shedeur Sanders, if he's not the first, he needs to be the second quarterback, because there's a huge drop off after that, where if you are taking somebody else, it's borderline irresponsible. I think that if LeBron, in the era of LeBron getting brawny, I think that there's a way to will this thing to happen. What I don't know is whether, if Deion Sanders is 50-50 for the Dallas Cowboys, then Deion Sanders might be the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. I would just think that you've just got so many other qualified candidates that are in the mix there that would create a different hiring environment. So is Jerry that kind of owner that he's just going to go out there and just bring in Deion and everything that came with him? Because I think Deion Sanders is perfect for college football. And that's not just being selfish, because the way that he is trying to, sell himself. I mean, I saw, obviously, cameras around everything that Colorado football does. Did y'all see his first team meeting? He was talking about
year.
This year.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm not a dad anymore. My sons are gone, and I'm so excited for what's going to happen with this group. And we've talked a lot, especially during the way this season and the way that we've tried to praise Deion Sanders for the way he's evolved. And there's been a lot of references to his coach in college, Bobby Bowden, and sort of the way that he tries to, coach him up, be a little tough, and really, enforce aspects of what the responsibilities are. I think Deion Sanders is a good college football coach, and I think that obviously, selfishly, losing him to the NFL would be losing a really great story, and I love good stories. But consider me not 50-50. If I was handicapping this one, I feel like I would take the other side if you were giving me a yes/no proposition. But been wrong before, could be wrong again.
What are the odds that he actually gets offered it and turns it down?
Oh, low.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's more looking at the landscape of the job.
I think the books that are out there that I've seen had Kellen Moore as the favorite, who's the Philadelphia Eagles offensive coordinator, and had time with Dak when Dak, I think led the league in yards. He's the favorite, and then Deion is the second favorite. So like I do think if he offers it, he would take it. The other thing is Dak Prescott, and that's maybe why Kellen Moore is thought to be brought back, because I think he's a guy who thinks he can win. But I do think, and I even saw Troy Aikman say this on the playoff game, like, I don't know if Dallas is this desirable destination that people think it is. One, because Jerry Jones calls all the shots, and it's going to be his way, and there's no other GM. I know his son is there, but he's calling the shots. And that Dak Prescott and his contract are there. Like, so maybe it's not as attractive as we think, where Kellen Moore, maybe he comes back and that's the done deal. But if he doesn't take it, the list of guys that might go there is pretty short. So then it's like Deion's.
When we think about the future at Colorado, obviously you're losing Shedeur Sanders, you're losing Travis Hunter, you're losing a lot of gifted players that led them to finishing tied for first place in the Big 12 standings. Bud, what's that? Have you started to do the early 2020? I don't think Colorado would be on the first team that I would think of for a way too early top 25 ballot, but what's the roster look like, at least in terms of trying to spin it forward for the Buffs?
I mean, like they still have some nice players at receiver. They still have some D linemen who played well this year. Like those guys are not all gone, but I don't think they're top half of the Big 12 next year. I mean, that team was not a two-man team, but two men were really responsible for a large portion of their success. So I think, who do they play in the non-con next year? 2025 schedule.
Now, to be fair, I don't know if they're a top half of the Big 12. Based on everything we know about the Big 12, the difference between 3rd and 12th is minuscule.
Yeah. Georgia Tech, Delaware, and Wyoming is their non-con.
That's 2-1.
Or 3-0. I mean,
wait. Right. Don't talk about college football playoff dark horse Georgia Tech like that.
Dark horse for this upcoming year?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, like they have to play Utah. Yeah, they're at Utah. They're at TCU. They're at Kansas State. They're at the Mountaineers. They're at Houston, which should be improved. Host Iowa State. Host BYU. Host Arizona State. Host Arizona. Who do they miss? They miss Texas Tech. They miss Baylor. They miss Kansas.
Well, if they miss Sawyer Robertson, then obviously they're going to be like clear. Yeah.
That's facts. Yeah, I'd say like probably somewhere in the 40s.
Yeah. But a bowl team like that. And that's something that's changed, right?
I think that would be a good goal. Is to make a bowl again. Yeah.
All right.
Did you guys see one of the tie-ins I had for Deion to Dallas? Like, do you see who their defensive coordinator is at Dallas? It's Mike Zimmer. Now.
Did he play for Mike Zimmer?
So he also had Mike Zimmer as an analyst in Colorado last season Mike Zimmer was there. So like he's got a relationship already. Pat Shurmur is his offensive coordinator, who is an NFL guy most of his career. Like that's why I was like, you could kind of see this making sense where like you could convince yourself, like I did, go over 50% or 50-50, that there's a lot of pieces here that you could see making sense. And Jerry's just crazy enough to do it because I do think it's kind of a crazy idea, but Jerry's Jerry.
When he was asked about it, y'all remember the 60 Minutes piece on Deion Sanders last year? In that piece, he talked about he did not think that he would be able to, or not that he would not be able to. He said he did not have the desire to try to lead the professionals just because of the makeup and the way that they treat the game and sort of what he would be looking to do. So things could change. Obviously, a lot has changed already for Deion Sanders. We'll be sure to keep our eye on it as he is one of the coaches that really moves the needle in the sport. Happy NFL Draft Deadline Day. It is today. It is January 15th. Now, if you are playing in the national championship game, you get an extension to January the 24th. There are a few names that I think we are like looking for official one way or the other declarations on by the end of the day. But as you look at the landscape in general, is there a team or a player that has stood out? I've got one team that I think has been hurt, one team that I think has been boosted, and a couple players for both of those, but curious to want to know where y'all go with this one in terms of the ins and outs of the NFL draft for underclassmen.
I think Penn State's a huge winner.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's what you're alluding to, right?
Like Abdul Carter has to go, but getting the backs back, that's pretty huge.
Yeah, Katron Allen and Nick Singleton have both announced in recent days their plans to return. We already knew that you were going to have Drew Aller back for another season. They've lost some wide receivers to the transfer portal. They've lost 0 receptions from the college football playoff semifinals to the transfer
from the Ohio State game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's something that's really exciting if you're a Penn State fan, that you're going to be able to get those players back just because they are not only such high-level players, but the experience that they bring from this season and what they're going to be able to do for that locker room. You guys know Josh Pate? Josh is a big fan of the show. He said something that I thought was pretty insightful, that next season is going to be a pressure-packed season for Penn State. That based on everything they did, everyone's like Drew Aller, there's going to be these sky-high expectations to make it back to the playoff. And what Josh pointed out was when you're bringing these guys back, you're bringing back players who in the locker room can bring that experience of having like been through the grinder and gotten like so close and had a breakthrough, but then kind of not had it go all the way as far as you did. But you had 2 playoff wins in this season. You had 0 bad losses this season. I think that whole offensive backfield, being able to be sort of like the heartbeat of that team, I think is going to be really important. Penn State, just an obvious winner to me.
Makes total sense from their standpoint too, as far as running backs, what you can get drafted in the NFL, what they probably can make coming back to play for Penn State. I think it's pressure packed, probably for nobody. I mean, James Franklin, obviously the head coach, but Drew Aller is going to be under a ton of pressure to take that next step forward.
Tonight, Dennis Sutton also announced he would be coming back. I mean, it's one of those things, like you're starting to see a little bit of a movement along the way. Do you think it says – wait, go ahead.
In the past couple of years, like Michigan did it, Ohio State did it, Penn State's doing it, like keeping these guys who would, be good draft picks, but maybe not great draft picks, getting them come back. Like that is a real recipe to win. Yeah,
Travion Henderson could have left, came back. Jack
Sawyer could have left. JTT.
Came back. JTT.
Tyleek could have left.
Yeah, Tyleek could have left.
Yeah.
He was eligible last year as well. Denzel Burke was eligible last year as well.
They're non-con, Nevada, FIU, and Villanova.
They are going to
Not
have a Michigan
exactly.
season. Dadgummit.
Yeah.
Like they just JV this thing all the way until you get to the biggest games of the year. There has been, on the other side of this, a bit of an exodus at Texas. Does this come as a surprise to y'all?
Like from the standpoint of that Texas has more money than anybody else, basically, kind of, but maybe these guys just think they're ready to go. Like,
Cam
maybe
Williams.
Cam Williams is getting like that kind of grade.
I also know what they're getting offered to come back too. I mean, because they've recruited Willie really well. They've got young talent. Maybe some of these guys, maybe they're not, because I'm sure there have been some NIL conversations. Maybe they're not thrilled with the money they were going to get there and said, I'll go get more in the NFL.
Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, also a part of that as well. I mean, this is, you factor in, Quinn Ewers' exit, and like Arch Manning is taking over, and Texas fans are ready for the Arch era. But for the second year in a row, looks like Steve Sarkisian's going to have to really retool this offense, because we remember, I think it was all of the significant receiving yards and rushing yards from last year's team when you factor in Jonathan Brooks. So when you lose the tight ends, when you lose, was it Amari Niblack last year, right? Yeah, and then like wide receivers as well. I mean, you run down the list. Xavier Worthy, like it was a it was a total retooling that he was able to do, and he was able to go and like press the right buttons in the transfer portal. Oh no, it's JT Sanders. JT Sanders was the one that left last year.
Right, Niblack left Bama to go there this year.
Right. Yeah. But losing JT Sanders, losing Xavier Worthy, losing all those other pieces that left them with very little returning production in terms of rushing and receiving yards, especially when you lost Cedric Baxter. It'll be interesting, because what do you make of the talent that's available? Like, what's out there to be able to replace it? Does it just mean more Ryan Wingo? Does it mean like you're just really relying on your internal development of some of those players?
I think in some cases, yeah, like this was not a great portal year. I was talking with some guys. Like one of the reasons to go to the coaching convention is just kind of like shoot the shit with some guys, and one of them told me, he's like, man, the board of guys that we thought was going to jump in the portal compared to who actually jumped in is depressing. He's like, and I think it's the house settlement money. Like more teams now have actual money to keep their good players, and so like the quality. If you were trying to like flip your roster this offseason in the portal, I think you're like, shit, man, there's not a lot of great stuff out there. Like we have got to do a better job of recruiting high school, because like the good teams are finding a way to retain most of their good players now. That's not all. Some of the top 10 guys in the portal are really good, but overall, I do think specifically like offensive line, defensive back, just talking to some big time schools out there. We're just, sitting around like, yeah, it was rough, man. Like guys, just the schools found the money almost across the board to keep their guys.
One last thought on the Penn State side of things. Do you think that the market for running backs is going to lead, like running backs used to be, you had to go right away, right? Because it was all about the tread on the tires. Now you can make so much more money through NIL coming back. Is that only happening at the top level, or do you think that changes sort of the way that the game is played? Or are we already seeing that with the ground game making a little bit of a return? Is there any way to connect NIL, NFL draft, and sort of what we will see in terms of the product on the field?
I mean, Trey Benson came back, right?
Yep.
At FSU, and he ended up being one of the top backs drafted. So I maybe there is a trend there. Like, are you more valuable to a college team for big time money than you are as a rookie in the NFL? Maybe. Like they're saying Carson Beck is going to make more at Miami than he's going to make it as a rookie in the league. Like, what's the value prop? Are you more valuable to a college team? I think there's a pretty good case for maybe you are.
Some of those numbers are stupid, though, and it's really pissing me off. Like when they say Carson Beck will make more money at Miami than he would in the NFL, when they just use the rookie salary and they don't include the signing bonus. Like they pair him next to Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams. Are like, look, he's going to make this much more. That's annoying. You better make sure you make this decision right. Ollie Gordon is another one who he could have come out last year, right?
Yep.
Did not. Boy, his draft stock has plummeted like off the deep end. It's still like going to be a tough decision. What do you guys think of Quinn Ewers? Like, we haven't heard from him yet.
No,
He told Pete Thamel. I was blown away with how nonchalant he was. Like, I'm done. Like, I'm going to the NFL. Now, maybe that was just genius on his part by maybe driving up the price a little bit more, but it seemed like a genuine, I haven't thought about it. Of course, I'm going to the NFL type of moment. So, but I think that's the one that I'm looking at. And of course, he still could declare and change his mind, like we saw with Carson Beck, right?
And with Cam Ward.
Cam Ward, like, so he still could do that. But that's the one that I think we're waiting for.
On any of these marginal guys, I believe you're actually going to the NFL when the deadline to withdraw from the draft passes.
Which is February, right? February.
Yep. Bud just mentioned the coaching convention. He's back home after being in Charlotte at the AFCA coaches convention. It was a pretty good turnout. We'll hear from him about the conversations out in public, the proposals that are getting tossed around, and so much more. Next. Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, and Bud, you got home healthy. That has not always happened from the coaches convention.
No,
so that's good. What do you make of it? Lay the land for us. Give us the lay of the land as the convention this year turned to Charlotte.
I like our new ad, by the way, little Masters ad.
It's that time.
Yeah, it is.
It is. That is relaxing. Okay, so basically, let's get to the stuff they had to kind of propose and vote on. So the coaches all get together for the head coaching meeting. That's always on the last morning. And they decide to vote on a couple things, or they'll just debate one thing for 4 hours, and that's the only thing they end up voting on, which is the case. What happened this year? So this is not any kind of binding rule. It's just the coach's suggestion that'll go to the oversight committee and to the rules committee. And so I'll tell you what they decided on first, and then kind of give you some thoughts just from talking to some guys in the hallway. They decided to unanimously approve a recommendation that the transfer window be shrunk from 2 windows to 1 window, and that window occurs only in January, from January 2nd to January 12th. Of course, you'd have to have exceptions for the 4 teams that make the semifinals, but we already have that now, so there's not much difference. But justification, basically, like allowing coaches to spend more time with their actual team for the end of the year during bowl season. I don't hate this suggestion at all. I asked coaches, like, what do you think about like this standing up some legal challenges? And he's like, well, we actually do have a guy in the room who's like an attorney advising us on that kind of stuff. Doesn't mean his advice is always going to hold up, but he's probably there to shoot down the stuff that's just like clearly illegal. Like, let's not waste our time on stuff that's just not going to fly. Whereas let's maybe spend our time on stuff that could fly. This is interesting. I said, like, what about the schools that start early? What are you going to do? And he was like, look, all these kids are tampered with anyway. If the window opens January 2nd, you already know like pretty much where they're going. If they want to go to a school that has classes start early, just tamper with them early. They're going to be ready to go. You fire it up then. Probably don't do a whole lot of visits. He's like, plus, if your school starts, I think the earliest school that started was January 6th or 7th, I think he said.
And you've got 2 weeks after
you still
the start
have 2 weeks
of
drop
classes.
ad.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. He's like, so if you want to go to one of those schools, figure it out. All right, cool. By the way, as per the last segment, Quinn Ewers officially announced that he's going to the NFL, which changes nothing. It's really like, does he stay in the draft until the pullout date? So this is an interesting proposal. Do I think it's going to work? I don't really know. I do think that anything that they were going to propose that was like, hey, move it to the end of spring, I thought that was unlikely to hold up in court if somebody challenged it, because you would essentially be saying, hey, non-employees, we're going to put restrictions on your movement and you have to stay in this school for an extra semester, which, I mean, look, staying in a school for extra semester doesn't seem like a huge hardship, but at the same time, like, it's still restrictions on movement that you're putting on people that on the other side of your mouth, you're saying are not employees. And traditionally that has not held up real well in recent years in court. So I think this has some chance to withstand scrutiny. However, the head coaches I talked to were like, yeah, we kind of doubt the oversight committee will take this seriously, but this is kind of what we would like to see happen. And I don't hate it.
I know there's some frustration from coaches that are always like, they never listen to us anyway, like on a large number of issues.
Right.
I think it makes total sense. I think you could have avoided, like, it's not going to solve everything. There's still going to be players that sit out in the bowl games. There's still going to be players, obviously, that opt out that has nothing to do with the transfer portal. But I do think you could help certain situations, even more specific, like Penn State was dealing with their backup quarterback in Texas a year ago with Malik Murphy and Bo Pribula. Like, you could see those situations potentially avoided. As far as the academic calendar and that issue, when was the last time we heard of a player that was really good, that like wanted to transfer, that was academically ineligible? Like, they figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's like, I don't even know why we even bring it up hardly anymore, because they just figure it out, and they usually can, and they can figure out a way to do it, especially with online classes. You know, there's a way. You don't even have to move there half the time to get there in person. Like, you can figure it out like they can. So I think it's a better solution than what we have. I think it makes more sense. But like Bud said, I don't know if it passes or not.
First, the only times that it does happen, you hear from coaches how frustrated they are because the only reason a player is ineligible is because they have refused to take advantage of the second and third loopholes that they have been opened up. Like, that is just the player has dropped the ball. Any player who is academically ineligible has already exhausted all of the extra chances that the coaching staff and the university have given them. I like here, Locals Corner. Dave Doran's been beating the table on, let's make it a one semester sport. And like, his suggestions are a little bit, more extreme in terms of like, Dave, we ain't playing games in Orlando in mid-August. Okay. That's just like, that probably is, we're not going to ask tens of thousands of fans to come out to these games, but a lot of what he's talking about was really more about the portal and about the movement and about the fact that, you should sign up for finishing the job. And when you've got that portal that opens up on like December the 6th, whether it is like your university experience, whether it is your bowl game, whether it is like whatever you've got, like, you are just not finishing the job at all. I think you would still have some bowl opt-outs. Sure. I can understand that, especially, draft related opt-outs, maybe a couple portal related opt-outs as well. But you wouldn't be speeding up the process of coaches tampering, personnel people tampering. You wouldn't be speeding up the process of everyone trying to get in your ear. You would be delaying all of that in a way that I think would better the experience, obviously, for coaches, which is why they're suggesting it. I think it would better the experience for players as well, because you sign up for a season and you go out there and you finish the job. And then after that, if you want to go and embrace this new era of empowerment and player movement, then you can, but stay there at least through the end of the season, at least through the end of the semester, and finish the year with your teammates in the bowl game. It seems to be like a happy medium between this new player empowerment era and a little bit more of a traditional mindset of, you signed up to do something, you stick with it until it's done.
Is Doran's model similar to what Sark has proposed? Sark has proposed like pushing back spring practice, like all the way almost to like a May or a June OTAs in the NFL.
Ooh,
a lot of guys do like that. They're like, we don't need spring practice. Let's just have a little more over summer.
Right. So like push that all the way back. Then you could have the portal post spring semester in school. So you could have academics be a little bit more of a priority. You could finish out the school year and then you're not missing anything. Cause that's a huge reason. Like, there's a huge benefit if you're a quarterback to getting into spring, going through a spring practice, learning the new playbook, learning your new teammates. Where if that was off the table, again, those are drastic changes, though. That's why I think even like I like them, but the chances of those happening are just so slim. And it's just
Doran's got the national championship game on New Year's Day.
Right. I would love to have that.
And again, I think that taking back New Year's Day for the biggest college football games that will decide our national champion, I think that's cool. I mean, we had a good New Year's Day. Well, look, it was kind of a sad New Year's Day with the Sugar Bowl, but like quarterfinals don't have the same pop, so I would like to see something along those lines.
I totally agree. Like, we're not going to play mid-August games here in Orlando. This came up at lunch yesterday, and my idea was basically, if we're going to do this, you're going to have to get TV to agree. How could TV do it? You could have like a kickoff week because like the thing is people will play night games in Orlando. No problem.
Right.
But you're not going to want to play the day games. Nobody wants to go to Gainesville for a noon game in August. Like that's.
I mean, it's a public safety concern. Like local county officials are going to be like, we cannot have 100,000 people out here in this heat right now.
Like when we go to Tampa for OT7 in late July, like, dude, I mean, it's like 8 hours, 10 hours out there on the field. Like you're not like drinking beers there. Like you're slugging water. You're wearing like a fishing hoodie. Like you're trying to find shade when you can. It's like, and afterwards you're dead. So yeah, I don't. But like, what if you did a kickoff week where you had 6 or 7 games going each night? Like that could be interesting, actually. Maybe some of the northern teams play during the day, and all the southern teams get more of the primetime spots to avoid the weather stuff there in those like maybe just like a total kickoff week.
When the NFL is doing those really early preseason games, Danny, is it pretty much just sort of understood and scheduled in that southern teams are just all going to have night games for those times, or are they all night games?
You mean preseason?
Preseason, yeah.
For the NFL? Yeah, those are almost all night games. Although they have been playing more Sunday afternoon. I mean, TV rules the day, and they figure out a way to make it work. I mean, you're right.
I was thinking about it. I was like, football is being played in August.
Yeah.
But, a little bit of a different
usually it's like up in Buffalo or Denver. Those aren't exactly known for the heat waves. But again, you could probably get around it, by having either night games. But it's hot at night. It's humid.
Cramps.
The problem though, it does hurt the fan experience to have to travel midweek to a game.
Right.
Yeah.
Bud, what else was I know the big headline seems to be the transfer portal window. What else did you pick up? Either stuff that was discussed in the big room, or like you were saying, back hallways, lunches, and the like.
So, like, just talking about like what is the shape of your funnel, right? In terms of player acquisition, like player retention. I was talking to a guy, personnel guy at a pretty successful SEC team, and where he's like, look, like culture and academics kind of matter more than they ever have in terms of retention. Like if you're at a good academic school, you're probably going to get a discount on a kid. Like if he chose you initially because like as one of the factors that made him choose you was the academics and maybe the culture of your school, then he's probably not going to leave you if he's making $450 to go make $520 elsewhere. And because all these schools now have money due to the House settlement, the offers, from like big time SEC versus like big time Big 12, they're not like that dissimilar. In some cases that they are still, and you see guys leave over a bit amount of money, but ultimately they're not leaving over like the small differences anymore. For instance, back when some of these schools were broke, like there were some ACC schools that had like less than $5 million last year in NIL money, from what I was told, and one like way less. But now they all have like serious NIL money due to House. Back then, like if you were offering a kid, 40, and somebody was offering 120, he's going to bounce, man.
Yeah, he's going to go for 120.
That's a pretty big difference, right? But let's say you're offering him 420 and somebody else is offering him 5. Like that's still an $80,000 difference. But like the marginal value of the dollar decreases as the both numbers go up. So then things like, hey, do I have a girlfriend here? How are my friends here? Like, is this place close to my parents? Do I actually like what school I'm at? Like, am I going to like get a degree from this school or that school? Am I on a track for my major? Things like that matter a little bit. And my SEC guy was like, look, like, I think in some cases, fewer of our kids actually care about the educational piece because our schools are not rated quite as highly on an education standpoint. He goes, but the thing is, we win on the front end, okay, because we can get a lot more kids into school at high school than like a Notre Dame. We were talking Notre Dame. Like, is Notre Dame a better job now than it used to be? And I think the answer is clearly yes, right? Because you're going to get kids in. They will, in some cases, take a moderate discount to stay. Like, they're not losing players almost ever, right?
Not ones they want to keep.
Correct. Yeah. Like my SEC guy was like, we will lose kids over money because they don't necessarily, in some cases, give a damn about the educational piece because we're not really, like, we're all kind of rated the same anyway, education wise, with Vandy being the exception. Although Florida will tell you they are, but I don't really think that's the case.
That's
but we're able to get
comparative.
But we're able to get so many more players into school initially. So our funnel is much bigger to start, right? Whereas theirs is a little bit differently shaped. I thought it was an interesting convo.
What about the faking injuries aspects of this?
Yeah, so they thought it was going to come up.
I thought the proposal was you sit out a drive.
Yeah, well, first of all, they couldn't agree on that. Apparently, like when they had some informal conversations, from what I was told, they also just ran out of time and they knew it wasn't going to be able to like get passed on the vote. So they spent I guess all the time, the majority of the time, basically my guy said like it just never came up, man. Like in terms of formally voting on it.
It's such an issue because like there's no perfect solution. It's just, and it's a blurred lines. What happens if the guy's really hurt, and you can burn the timeout if if a guy gets hurt, you have to keep him out the rest of the series, but you can burn a timeout, like say it's your quarterback and he just gets the wind knocked out of him. But no coach wants to waste a timeout if you don't have to. And then it becomes like this, it's just a very gray area of you just have to have some trust involved there. And it's in our sport where everyone's trying to toe the line. We just know that some teams are taking advantage of it, some aren't. I just think in my opinion, and Greg Sankey, this is where he came out and kind of threatened the fines. I think you just have to make the fine significant. You go watch the tape. A team can submit, say, hey, this is the example. We saw him. We saw the point in the sideline. You can clearly demonstrate when it does happen. And then the commissioners have to come out and start hammering these coaches with fines, take money out of their pocket, make it significant.
I as somebody who proposed the sit out of drive rule, like back before I even worked for CBS, I do think that there's a real problem with it. And like we've always had to acknowledge it, but man, the second some guy plays through like some chest pain and some numbness because he doesn't want to come out, okay, and he drops dead out there, that's a hell of a lawsuit. It's like, look,
that changes the sport.
He was discouraged from coming out of the game because he knew he would have, like he was trying to tough it out because he knew he'd have to sit out the rest of the drive. I think that's the major liability worry to have on this.
Counselor Bud.
But also,
with the legal
we also have tons of hypocritical safety rules. Like we have this targeting rule, which I think is complete BS. And yet we allowed the play. Like we are so concerned about the badness of the hit. Like it's so bad and scary of a hit. Yet we don't make the guy who is being targeted sit out for a medical check for even one play. Like, how is that not mandatory? We're saying these hits are so dangerous and you get smoked, and yet like you're staying in there, but we're taught like it's so bad we have to eject the player who did the targeting.
All right, remind me, because obviously we were in the midst of the watch party, very much enjoying everybody that came out. But was it a Notre Dame trainer or an official that ran over to grab Leonard after he fell? Do y'all remember?
We weren't listening to the broadcast, but I remember watching it and we didn't have the sound up. We were talking or something. It looked to me like the official turned him around and was like pointed at him. And then very quickly you had a trainer or a medical staff member come get him off the field. That's the way it looked to me.
Like an official didn't kick him off, but an official turned to the sideline and was like, come get your
boy. Like they give him that signal. They give him the look, which I don't know, man. I'm old school. I have a big problem with that. And we saw Riley Leonard come back and play unaffected and, help them win the game. What if he wasn't allowed to return because the official makes that case,
Yeah.
In boxing though, like they will stop the fight. I guess.
I almost wish they had an official timeout where the official could say, I'm going to take a timeout. You check him out, make sure everything's good. And then you can bring him back on the field.
Oh yeah. If somebody falls because of an ankle or they get rolled up on, right.
Injury timeout.
Yep. Okay. So again, Bud, any other last thoughts before we hit a break and then get into a little big game breakdown?
No, like these guys are still going to work really hard because they're still going to get paid millions of dollars. And I don't think any of them are on the verge of quitting. Maybe some of your head coaches that have been in it for 15 years, like, hey, like I made enough money. I'm tired of some of the headaches of the sport. But I think a lot of the young guys are not going anywhere. And like that was a big topic conversation of, hey, let's get some of these older coaches out of here so we can get past the complaining stage and we can kind of work together for some solution stage, which is encouraging. I don't think we're having all this talent.
Yeah, I know. They told us when Jeff Hafley decided to go take a coordinator job that we were never, ever going to have good college coaches again.
And Jim Delaney of the Big Ten once said that they would drop to Division III if players got paid. And that also didn't happen.
It's so funny. No, actually, James, NIL has led to the Big Ten having some of its best seasons in the last 2 years possible, with another big one on deck in 2025. Coming up on the other side, it is a Wednesday. Time to give Ohio State-Notre Dame that big game breakdown treatment. Next.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Gareth Bale! Ronaldo! Wonderful goal!
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
The last big game of the season. Got to break it down. It's big game breakdown. All right, so big game breakdown today. We will do some of our best bets, sort of the locks version, Thursday, as we normally would. Monday's show, the day of the game, we'll do our usual props-a-palooza, just kind of spray the board with everything we got, as many different ways that you can attack this. So as we look at the nitty-gritty of the matchup, Danny, what's lingering to you right now in terms of Ohio State-Notre Dame?
So I think when you have a favorite like this, I kind of look at it from the underdog standpoint. Like, how does Notre Dame not get run through the way that Tennessee and Oregon got run through, right? Like, so I'm trying to look at this. That's almost like naturally where my lens goes to, like when I'm looking and previewing this matchup. And I think there's a couple things that are like Notre Dame's recipe. One, I think there is some similarities between Notre Dame and Michigan. The type of athlete, the type of game plan, and Notre Dame has better quarterback play. You know, they've gotten better, just play around the board, but similar style of team defensively, defensive driven, pretty good along the defensive line. So I think from a matchup standpoint, that kind of helps Notre Dame. You figure out that, and Michigan laid out a game plan where you can kind of slug it out with them. And then Texas, I thought Texas showed a game plan that you don't have to get torched in your secondary by Jeremiah Smith and Mecca Buka and company, and you can slow this juggernaut down somewhat, kind of like we talked about. Now, after the first drive of the game, it was like, here goes Ohio State right through Texas like a knife through butter, and then Texas kind of settled in, rebounded, did a good job getting pressures, did a good job not giving up the big play, get a good job helping on Jeremiah Smith, allowing him only one catch, and kind of playing a little bit more of that bend, don't break. Now, Notre Dame, their thing is, I do think they like to play more man coverage, which I would caution against as a secondary. Even with the type of talent they have, it's going to be really hard to match up across the board with what Ohio State runs. So I think for Notre Dame, like the game plan is we want to stay true to our identity on the offensive side of the ball. We want to try to run it. We're going to run our quarterback. We're going to not ask him to do a ton, but be very efficient. Don't turn the ball over. And then defensively, we want to pick our spots to be aggressive, to confuse Will Howard. But I would tell them to go watch the game film of Texas and try to take a page out of that one as far as some of the coverages that were played and making sure they stay in front of you and don't get behind you.
So, I think a lot of us are assuming, and there's probably good reason for it, that the Irish are going to play a lot more split safety coverage like they did against Indiana and like they also did, especially against USC. Like the two teams that probably had the best receivers that they played this year, I would think. Louisville would be an argument too with Bell and Brooks and those guys. But what if they don't? Like what if they're like, hey, dance with what brung you. We think we're the best man coverage team in the nation. What if we don't play that split safety stuff quite as well? Right? Like, what if we play the style of plan that basically allows us to maybe have a shot to hold Ohio State to like a sick low number, which our offense might need if we're actually going to win the game? What if the style of play that is required of the Irish to win this game is also the same plan that would potentially facilitate them getting blown out?
Right? Like just go big.
What if they just try to man up Jeremiah and Buka? Okay, like there's some chance that Howard misses those guys, right? Like if they play their normal stuff, it's going to be a lot of they press the boundary a ton. It's going to be a lot of probably back shoulders to Jeremiah and some go balls depending on how they're going to play it. What if they're just off, right? Howard, though, I think Ohio State will have a good game plan probably for him to keep it pretty simple. I know we talked on yesterday's show that he screwed up one of those zone reads in the first quarter against Texas. And I mean, Judkins is probably going to go 60 yards if he hands the ball off. I think you could see a lot more empty out of Ohio State in this game, but not necessarily empty 5 wide. Like I could see them starting out in 12, and they use very little 12 personnel against Texas. And I think part of that was probably the speed of the Texas backers. Like when you go back and watch that, I think the speed of the Texas backers and the speed of the Michigan backers, they had a lot of similarities there. So I wonder if that's why Ohio State decided to spread them out more. Now, granted, the other argument there might be, well, they just watched Clemson and Arizona State operate out of 10 and 11 personnel almost exclusively and have a lot of success. So they wanted to see, if they could do it too. But I think if I'm Ohio State, I think I might just run 12 personnel and try to spread Notre Dame out a little more and go a little more 11-man run game with Howard to where he's not reading as much. It's just QB counter, QB bash, some play action off that type of stuff. You can run your jet stuff out of that pretty well. But it does take, obviously, Henderson and Judkins out of the game a little bit, and those are some of the best players on that offense. Let me see other stuff from the notes here. How does Notre Dame decide to play the screen game? Ohio State's screen game has been really good in the playoffs. It's explosives off it, and then later on they've kind of run some the fake bubble stuff and go, and they've had some success with that too. I do like how the Irish, they play a boatload of man coverage, and they play a lot of cover one, but they disguise it pretty well.
Yeah, that's the thing is
the way they get to it. Yeah.
You don't have to necessarily sack Will Howard to make him make a mistake. And that's where it's got to be Al Golden and sort of this defense all being together and understanding what they're trying to do so that they can be able to get him throwing the ball to the wrong place.
If you're Day and you're sitting down Chip Kelly and you're sitting down Jim Knowles, I think you're like, Jim, what do you think you can hold him to? 14, 17, somewhere around there.
20.
Chip, as long as your offense, as long as their special team doesn't allow some kind of defensive score, which I think Notre Dame leads the nation in non-offensive points scored. So that they have had a lot of that this year, and that's to their credit. They do a great job on special teams. They disguise well on defense despite leading the country in man coverage, which is pretty impressive to be the leading man coverage team and also generate that many turnovers. I think that speaks to how well they disguise how they get to some of their stuff. And I think if you're Chip and you're hearing Jim Knowles say, all right, we can hold him to 17. This is hypothetical, obviously. Ryan's like, okay, we can score 24. We've scored 21 and 17 on these guys the last 2 years without Jeremiah. How do we score 24 without Will jacking this game up for us? If he doesn't throw it away, we're going to win the ball game.
But that, to me, would make me a little bit nervous because I think that's probably the mindset going into Michigan.
Right.
That's where the similarities to how does Notre Dame win this game? It's if Ohio State comes in, they're a little bit different, or they try to not expose Will Howard, or they try to, just keep it and trust their defense.
Oh, we're going to run it on first down. We're going to be super conservative. Now we're done in second and long. Oh, no, Will missed a guy. Now we're in third and long going up against a defense that can bring a lot of pressure from different places.
I don't disagree with that at all. But like in the playoffs, they have been a little more screens and bombs on early downs.
Correct. They have.
Fairly safe. If you throw the pick on the bomb, it's kind of like a punt.
Right.
I think what you probably see more is, first, second down didn't work. It's 3rd and 8. Hey, man, a punt in our defense against Notre Dame's offense is not the worst thing in the world. So, be smart about this. I wonder if you see more of their early down shots like they did against Tennessee and Oregon.
So Ohio State had one of its worst statistical rushing performances of the season against Texas. Notre Dame's run defense had one of its worst statistical performances of the season against Penn State. Who comes back? Who comes back to the middle? And what's there to be made when it's Ohio State and again, not tricking it up, not quarterback run. You got two dogs there. Was it the youth pastor and the boy with grills who yells at you the whole time? TreVeyon Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, the perfect combination for a backfield. And then, a Notre Dame run defense that's been pretty solid.
So I think if you look at this, a lot of that Penn State rush success came early.
Right. They buckled him down in the second half.
Because they added more guys to the fit. And they said, okay, all right, we can't just get bullied for 60 minutes. If you can pass on us, do it. I think initially Penn State was pretty worried about, or sorry, I think Notre Dame was pretty worried initially that Penn State was going to scheme up stuff on them, right? And they just ultimately couldn't.
Yeah.
As far as like the wide open guys, I know Aller missed the one, but no receiver. He missed two.
Oh no, I thought Danny had to go. I was giving.
Oh, sorry, Dan.
I have another. There's an update to my schedule, which has been pushed back, so we're good to go now.
Okay.
Our producer Jack is in the doghouse right now because it was you're on, you're off, then it was you're on. It was Quinn Ewers breaking news, but apparently they did enough in the last 15 minutes where he got some extra time.
Hey, remember the key words are in the moment, right?
Right.
Those are 3 key words in the moment.
That's right.
Sorry, bud. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. Can they afford to put more guys in the fit against Ohio State?
When it's Jeremiah Smith and not Amari Evans and Harrison Wallace.
Correct. Yeah,
Right.
that is a bit of a difference there.
Danny, what else is sort of lingering about the matchup?
How much does Notre Dame use tempo to their advantage? The time of possession. I don't think they're going to be any rush at all, but do they go super slow? You got to kind of be careful with that because you don't want to get out of what you normally do. Like you want to stay in your rhythm, but also I do think you want to be conscientious about not giving the ball back to Ohio State. And I think you guys nailed it with Al Golden. Like, I don't think they're going to sit back in a 2 deep or a 4 deep, like a umbrella coverage all game.
Yeah.
You pick your spots. And there are going to be times when I guarantee you Al Golden makes his call and is like talking on the headsets to the coaches and like, this is it, boys. Like, this is the one. Like, this is where we're going to take it. We're going to take our shot. And we're either going to come up with a sack or we're going to come up with a big hit or we're putting our corners on an island. And those plays are whenever you have to take your chances and trust your guys. And Will Howard, does he step up and make it, or does he get sacked, or does he have to scramble? Like, that to me is going to be probably the biggest determinant of the game.
Can Notre Dame block Ohio State?
Not the whole game, but that's the advantage of having Riley Leonard. He wasn't clean every snap against Penn State, especially late when they were coming down that second half. I mean, he can scramble. And sometimes it's just a scramble back to the line of scrimmage or it's a scramble for a throwaway, but that is a lot better than an 8-yard loss and a sack. So like and then you asked about the running games. That to me will be really interesting to see. Like Jeremiah Love, who had this kind of resurgence all of a sudden, like when he found some adrenaline in that game, being able to drag guys to the goal line. How about Aeneas Williams too, the young back who provided such a spark in that, and they were throwing the ball to him, catching the ball. Like they showed some things that they can do to generate offense where, I think a lot of that is aware of we're not going to be able to line up with our offensive line, this mixed unit with guys who have been hurt and filling in patch and pieces. Denbrock has done a really good job of generating offense and generating big plays.
Cotton Bowl was a little bit of a ref show. It was our beloved ACC officiating crew that did the octolateral Duke Miami, that also did the Hail Mary that wasn't Virginia Tech Miami. Danny, you know what the officiating crew is for this national championship game?
Tell me it's not the ACC again.
That's the Big 12, right?
No, it's usually is the Big 12 of the ACC.
SEC?
Yes.
Oh, I got to get a picture with these guys.
Nice.
Oh, I'm getting a picture now. Pre-game.
You got to bring in the crew. You got to bring in the crew that doesn't have a team
call.
in the game. SEC officials, because no SEC teams made it. Oh, hey, don't worry, Southeastern Conference. You'll be represented by the Stripes. I would love, because we're talking about all this stuff. I don't want to see a ref show. I don't want to see the PI offense work. I don't. But that might end up being an X factor.
So if they let them play, it benefits the Irish a ton.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. The PI offense to me is like they're being really handsy in man coverage with a super talented Smith or Ibuka, and they're not even making catches, but Ohio State's able to march the ball down and Quinshawn runs it in from 7 yards out. Like that's a path that I could see happening.
Who are the best running quarterbacks Notre Dame has faced this year?
All right, I've got him pulled up right. Haynes King.
Yeah.
Was Haynes maybe
Did
a
he
little
know
bit?
he didn't play that game?
Right?
He was out.
I remember because I think that was one where I gave out Georgia Tech and then was pissed, and there was
Because he was
minute.
scratched last minute.
That's why my pick sucked this year. That
right.
game.
That's it. Blake Horvath, Bryson Daly.
Didn't Horvath get knocked out in the first quarter?
In the first, he had the thumb injury. He kept turning it over.
Ethan Hampton did have 5 carries for 21 yards. Northern Illinois' quarterback.
I guess my point here is, yes, there is some chance they decide we're dance to what brung you. We're going to play a lot of man coverage. If we get roasted, we get roasted, and they might. But how do you account for the QB's legs in that? Because even though Howard has not been crazy mobile this year, I think he is.
He can hurt you.
Would he be the most mobile quarterback they have faced in an offense that's not Army Navy?
I don't know, man. Way that Will Howard just tripped and fell, I believe he slid down my mobile quarterback rankings. He's got a big body, and he can.
I guess Tyler's ducking around a little bit. Maeva's not like a total statue.
No. Maeva had a couple rushing scores late in the season for the Trojans as well. All right. Again, we will be back on Thursday with our best bets for this game, rounding out our college football playoff edition of the Locks competition. Let's see what happened in I will recap it. Just come tune in Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern time for that. We will be on CBS Sports Network about 2.5 hours, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, with more looks at the college football playoff national championship between Ohio State and Notre Dame. And you can follow him on Twitter at Danny Kanell. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip _Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
See ya.